Hello, everybody, and welcome to another article breakdown video here on the channel. Today we are covering Switching Colors by Ben Stark, which is an excellent article on reading signals in the draft so you can switch into the open colors more often and build better decks as a result. It did come out in 2013, so I'm going to be explaining those old examples and making sure they make sense to you in a modern context, and overall just helping to bring more exposure to this article that's really hard to find on the internet these days, but is an absolute gem that will help you become a better player. If you've never heard of Ben, he is famously the author of Drafting the Hard Way, which is the best draft article ever written. He is one of the greatest limited players of all time, if not simply the greatest limited player of all time. He is a Pro Tour champion, he's top-8'd multiple other Pro Tours, and he is a Magic the Gathering Hall of Famer. So he has a great list of credentials to his name, and I consider him to be a friend. He's come on to the channel as a guest multiple times, and I've gotten to hang out with him in real life, and he is an absolute gem of a person. He's fantastic. I really enjoy his company, and it's always great to be able to share some of his Magic knowledge as well, because he is a fantastic player. So we're going to be going through this article, and let's get started. Stark Reality, Switching Colors. So that's the name of his column, Stark Reality. The article is called Switching Colors. After my last article, Drafting the Hard Way, I received a lot of great feedback. I realized that while my goal remains to teach everyone how to draft well in general and not just a specific format, I would need to elaborate on the three main topics. A lot of people understood some of what I was saying, but not enough to be able to apply it on their own. People had the most trouble with the concept of switching colors, so I'll start with a more detailed explanation of that. Today, I'm going to talk about how to read the draft in a draft format where Pack 2 and Pack 3 aren't of significantly different value to each other. He was writing this article in a time when there were frequently sets where you would be drafting from different booster packs in packs 1, 2, and 3, because it used to be a block structure. So Pack 1, for example, would be from the first Ravnica set, and then you would go to the second Ravnica set, and then the third Ravnica set, like for 3 different consecutive packs. So there would just be different cards that mattered. Because in today's era, you're just going to be drafting the same set for all 3 packs. There's a couple of paragraphs here that we're going to skip because they're not relevant to the way drafting is done today. But I will be linking this article in the description, so if you want to read through those paragraphs on your own, then of course that would be fun, because it's always great to learn a little bit more about Magic history. But yeah, that's just what he means when he says Pack 2 and Pack 3 aren't of significantly different value. This is the case the vast majority of the time. Like anytime you are using 3 of the same pack, or anytime there isn't some great distortion from Pack 2 to Pack 3. So we just use 3 of the same pack all the time these days. So here we go, back to the part we're going to care about. When people watch me draft, the most common pick I'm asked about will be when I take a card early in Pack 1 that doesn't fit with my other cards. I don't switch into that color, but instead continue drafting as though I never took it. That feedback, plus the responses from my previous article, which was Drafting the Hard Way — he had a couple of banger articles in a row, which is pretty legendary — gave me some insight into why people aren't understanding this part of a booster draft. This is a complicated concept, so if you get confused, just reread it and think it over, and of course, feel free to ask me questions. If the last article was Introduction to Advanced Drafting, then this will be a higher level course delving very deep into the specifics of one of the 3 topics we covered in the intro class. What am I talking about? An example of how I draft differently than most people and how I stay open to position myself to have a good deck in almost every draft instead of some 10s and some 1s would be the following type of pick. Let's say we're drafting M14, and our first 4 picks are Serra Angel, so 5 mana, 4/4 flyer with vigilance in white. This card was a powerhouse back then. It's even strong enough to be playable in modern limited sets, which is not the case for some of the cards we'll be looking at in the future in this pack. But Serra Angel is a great card, and especially back then in M14 was a card that would really make you want to play white. He then followed it up with Pacifism, so a really rock-solid removal spell that we have seen many times. It got printed in a lot of sets after this point, and very similar cards have been seen before as well. But Pacifism is 1 and a white, enchanted creature, can't attack or block, so it's an aura you put on your opponent's creature. This used to be a premium removal spell in white, that sort of effect. Doomblade is his next pick, which is 1 and a black, destroy target non-black creature, so premium removal for back then, and instant speed, 2 mana, kill a spell. And then Quag Sickness, so another removal spell, so 2 and a black, enchanted creature gets -1/-1 for each swamp you control. And was an enchantment, so it scaled with the game, especially if you were heavy black. It was a solid removal spell, and so these were the sorts. He started off with a really good Serra Angel, then he went Pacifism, Doomblade, Quag Sickness, so then removal. So that was the way he started his draft. For simplicity's sake, let's say we didn't pass anything more or less enticing in any color. Now, 5th pick, if faced with a choice between a mediocre but fine playable from black or white, or a considerably better green card, not a mythic or limited powerhouse, should we end up in green? So he's talking about his next pick, he had the choice between something like Death Gaze Cockatrice, so 2 black for a 2/2 flyer with Death Touch, so reasonable card, probably wouldn't really be playable these days because 4 mana for a 2/2 flyer is a bit small, but Death Touch does help, so this sort of card. Charging Griffin, which is kind of an embarrassing card to think about for Modern Limited because it's a 4 mana 2/2 flyer that sure it attacks as a 3/3, but there's oftentimes just 4 mana 3/3s these days in Limited, which was not the case back then. And then he's also got the choice. So he's got a card like Death Gaze Cockatrice or Charging Griffin, or considerably better green card like Rumbling Baloth. So 2 green for a 4/4. That's it. So this was a great card back then in M14 Limited. He talks about it a little bit more later about how this is one of the best green commons in the set. And you just need to understand, okay, just wrap your head around the fact that back in M14, Rumbling Baloth was a great card. So just It used to be that this was just a big good stat line. Like 4 mana for a 4/4 used to be a good stat line. These days, you would really need to get a lot more. You would get like 4 mana 4/4s that like almost like draw you cards type things. Like there's like so much more power level these days that it would probably like have trample. It would like generate you a food. Like we've seen things like that all the time. Like a food token, it would make you like a treasure token. There's like all sorts of things these days that would make a 4 mana 4/4 a little bit like not something you'd want to play. Especially because it's 2 green that's harder to cast. But this is just a rock solid stat line and was a good card back then. And so just understand that when in the context of this article, when he says Rumbling Baloth, he means just conjure into your head one of the best green commons or something like that. And then these cards, as you can imagine, are kind of like mediocre filler cards. But don't just think, okay, these cards are unplayable. Think like, okay, mediocre filler cards. And so that's just the sort of context that you need to understand this article, because the point still stands. It's just the set was different. So this card was like a good card back then. Anyway. Most of the people I know would take the mediocre black or white common and wouldn't even think twice about it. This is completely wrong. Here's why they do it and why it's completely wrong. I think in many cases they envision what would be a better deck. My current best color, so he's saying his white cards, Serra Angel and Pacifism, plus Rumbling Baloth, so he's going to add his white cards to his green card, and I drop Doomblade and Quag Sickness, or Serra Angel, Pacifism, and this mediocre white card, plus Quag Sickness and Doomblade. So he's talking about the 2 groupings that you consider. So either your white cards plus your new green card, or your white cards plus the black cards you already have, so those 2 extra removal spells, and like another mediocre white card. Do you see the flaw in the logic there? What you actually have to ask yourself is, what will be better? My current white cards plus Rumbling Baloth, plus the rest of my draft, or my current white and black cards plus this mediocre common, plus the rest of this draft. This is a huge difference because you're adding in this rest of the draft component. Well over half of the time, if we are seeing the best green common 5th pick, so like imagine just seeing like the best green common 5th pick. Rumbling Baloth doesn't maybe look like it, but it was a great card. The people to our right feeding us the remainder of this pack, as well as pack 3, are not going to be in green. Furthermore, if we aren't seeing any good white or black commons, there is an above average chance that white and black are being drafted heavily to our right. Also, the opportunity cost in taking the Baloth is much lower than in passing it. Opportunity cost is a way of saying like what you're giving up to take it. And in this case, you're not giving up much because you're only giving up one of these mediocre commons. So that's what he means by opportunity cost. When I take the Baloth there, then make the switch because I saw a lot of green, people understand what I did and why, and rarely ask me about it. It's when I then go right back to drafting black and white and don't switch into green that people often ask me why I took the Baloth. And what he means by this is he's saying, okay, if I took the Baloth and then green was flowing, and I drafted a bunch of green cards, people are like, oh, he switched into green. But when he just keeps drafting black and white cards, people are confused because they're like, oh, I thought you were switching into green there, and then you didn't. What happened? And here he explains. Each pick is simply a decision point, not where we make grandiose decisions deciding our entire draft. When I take the Baloth, I'm not committing to green because I know green is going to come, or white and black aren't. Sometimes a pack just has 5 good cards, and a lot of them are green, and Baloth is the 3rd best. If in pick 6, I go back to seeing white and black cards, and don't see any more green cards that pull me into that color, I'll go right back to drafting my black-white deck, and all that's lost is a mediocre white or black playable that costs my final deck very little. Now, look at the flip side, where green does keep coming. Crisis averted. Now I can drop whichever I see less of, white or black, or draft a green deck with less powerful stuff and make an overall good deck. So he's saying he can now switch. He has the flexibility to actually draft green because green is flowing, and he's actually been able to make that change, and he's not given up on a powerful card, like Rumbling Baloth in this case. I leave myself open to switching should the draft push me in a different direction. I don't make a firm point for when to switch. Imagine you took that mediocre white or black card, and the next pack has another good green common, and another mediocre but perfectly fine white or black card. You can see that black and white aren't nearly as open as green is, but now do you switch? You probably still should, but now you are missing a copy of the best common in your color in a deck that you will need, in a deck that will need it, since you had to miss some of your early picks. The opportunity cost is much higher than if you had just taken the green card with the previous pick, even if you only move into green 25% of the time in this imaginary draft. The 75% of the time you don't, missing that mediocre card will cost you very little in your good deck anyway, whereas missing that first pick quality card out of your deck when you had to switch will cost you greatly. A lot of this is about maximizing the overall power level of your deck in the aggregate instead of like the individual case where if he was drafting a deck that was only going to be 10s or 1s, which he says he avoids because he's trying to make sure he drafts a good deck all the time, if you just only took the white and black cards and just stuck to your guns every single draft, if white and black aren't open, you're going to get absolutely like wrecked that draft. But if white and black are open, you're going to get the best white and black card from every pack, and you're going to feel like your deck is amazing. And so what he's saying here is that even if you are switching only some percentage of the time, you need to balance out the fact that you're not always going to end up in this white-black deck, and sometimes you're going to need to switch colors. And the times where you do need to switch colors, it's so important to have these quality cards because you're missing out on some of your early picks, which are going to be some of your best cards generally. And so you need to be able to make those switches if you are going to draft good decks consistently. In addition, you're more likely to create an additional green drafter by letting that Baloth through. So the person to your left then sees the Baloth pick 6, and they're like, oh my gosh, a Rumbling Baloth. I mean, it's still kind of fun to me to talk about how amazing Rumbling Baloth was. But yeah, by letting that Baloth through. Far more likely than creating a black or white drafter behind you by passing some mediocre playable that won't cause anyone to switch colors. So like he's saying here, if you pass the Baloth, then the person to your left might move into green. So then even if you switch into green later, then you get a little bit more cut in pack 2 than you would have otherwise, which you shouldn't always spend that much time thinking about the person you're passing to. This is just more of a supplemental point he's making. Also, are you looking for 2 consecutive good green cards to decide to switch? So what if pick 6 to 8 had mediocre green playables because it's open? If the packs weren't that strong and there wasn't much in the way of black and white cards because they weren't open and the packs weren't that strong. Reading the draft isn't attempting to be psychic. It's putting yourself in the position to have the highest overall expected value with all possibilities for the rest of the draft. So like if there aren't just like 2 great green cards in a row, that means that you would never switch into green. And sometimes there's just going to be like a great green card that you need to read as the signal. And then there's going to be like some mediocre cards because you're getting to pick 6 and 8 and you don't expect to see great cards. Remember, once you add in the invisible remainder of the draft, what you already have becomes less important to the overall strength of your deck. Since you have a few cards and 80 to 95% of your deck will be composed of this rest of the draft. This part should be intuitive, but that means the later it is in the draft, the less likely you should be to switch into something new. If you have ever seen me draft in a format I'm well practiced in, you may have noticed that sometimes I take the full amount of time on some picks during pack 1, but in pack 3 I often pick up the pack and almost instantly pick a card. So like if he was the featured drafter at a pro tour, when you're like seeing his picks, you might just go boom, kind of like that. Weighing when to take that green card and when to take the worst card in the colors you already have is hard. That's why I titled the last article, Drafting the Hard Way. There is nothing wrong with the drafts where you get to stay the same colors the whole draft and get to play all your early picks from pack 1. Those will, on average, be your very best decks, but trying to force that to happen will result in train wrecks. You must always be trying to position yourself to draft the best deck available to you in every draft, whether or not that means ditching your mythic rare first pick or dropping 3 of your first 4 picks. Your goal is to win the most matches possible, not to put together a perfect 10. How you accomplish that is also somewhat counterintuitive, since putting together a 10 seems like the way you would win the most matches possible. The math here is too complex for me, but a simple way to think about it would be if half your decks were 3-0s and half were 0-3s, you would win exactly 50% of your matches before play skill. And he uses 3-0 or 0-3 because that's, if you're playing an 8-person pod, that's how many rounds you play. If all, like an FNM or a Pro Tour or things like that. If all of your decks are 2-1s, that's a 66% win percentage. That's a super oversimplification, and there is no real math behind those numbers, but that is basically how the concept works. Draft a good deck every time, and you will generally have a higher win percentage than if you draft the 10 sometimes and the 1 sometimes. So, draft strategy. That is the article. I really do hope you enjoyed it. It is all about trying to get the highest power level possible into your deck on average. So even if you don't switch into green in this metaphorical example, it's still worth it to take the chance because the times you do switch into green, it's really going to help you. Taking these high power level cards and not just settling for the cards in your colors is something that is not always going to work out, but the times it does work out is really going to be worth it. I hope you enjoyed this article as much as I did, enjoyed sharing it. It is an excellent one, and I hope that you enjoy the fact that you get to see this gem that's really hard to find, and maybe you've never seen it before. But yeah, if you did make it all the way to the end of the video, let me know in the comment section down below by leaving hashtag Bailoff, because Rumbling Bailoff was the star of the show in this video. So hashtag Bailoff in the comments to let me know you made it to the end of the video. Remember to hit the thumbs up button if you did enjoy it. Subscribe to the channel for more videos. And I do really hope you enjoyed this one, because I love being able to share these old articles with you. That's going to do it for this one, though. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll talk to you next time.